this episode, I'm headed to historic Germantown to visit Attic Brewing. I sit down with owners Laura and Todd Lacy to discuss one of Philly's newest breweries. We talk about how the National Park Service caused them to be bitten by the beer bug, and why they started a new business in this up-and-coming neighborhood, only to be faced with COVID and forced to pivot their new company after being open for only 8 weeks. Welcome to No Pants During the Pandemic. Hi, I'm Kevin Brooks, and welcome to No Pants During the Pandemic. This time I'm at Attic Brewing, speaking with owners Todd and Laura. Hey guys, how you doing?
Hi.
Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourselves?
I'm Laura.
I'm Todd.
And we're the owners of Attic Brewing Company here in Germantown, Philadelphia.
Neither of you guys are originally from Philadelphia, and you have an interesting, background coming in. So why don't we start with you? How did you wind up getting into this beer thing?
I'm originally from Chicago. When I finished college, I moved to Philadelphia to work at Valley Forge National Historical Park. We were lucky we had a group of rangers who were into craft beer and home brewing, so we would get dressed up in Revolutionary War uniforms and do campouts at the huts at Valley Forge. And the first time I showed up, I brought Yingling with, thinking it was like a great beer. I had never heard of it before, and had my mind blown with some of these cool beers.
And Todd, your background isn't in beer either. You're also from the National Park Service, right?
I'm from Colorado. Originally, I grew up there and came out east to work at Valley Forge. And after a couple years of working at Valley Forge, that's where I met Laura. And it's kind of the same story. All the rangers that were there were really into craft beer, so they kind of introduced us to it and she really got us into it. But a couple of them also happen to be homebrewers too, so kind of catching on to the whole craft beer scene and learning that you can make your own beer was really cool. And I started to talk to them about it. They invited me over to brew days, which I really liked. It was fun. And then eventually Laura ends up buying me a homebrew kit, and from there I started to homebrew my own beer.
And are you still at Valley Forge, or have you moved on?
From Valley Forge, I went to Independence National Historical Park. So now my job's to work at the Liberty Bell, Independence Hall, and all those sites in the city.
And you got into craft beer once you moved here, as opposed to out in Colorado?
Yeah, which is funny, because Colorado has a huge craft beer scene, but I never really explored it till I came out here. Every time we go back to Colorado to visit my family, we started to hit up just different breweries.
So you bought him a homebrew kit. How'd that go?
It was good, yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, my 30th birthday hit, Laura bought me a homebrew kit. We started brewing in our attic apartment, and it's fun. Like the first batch I did was a black IPA that came out really good. So of course, when that first batch is coming out good, you get hooked, you want to explore more options, and just kind of kept going from there and started experimenting and had some good batches, some bad batches. Brewing in an attic apartment was interesting too, trying to keep temperatures controlled and summertime temperatures. Yeah,
It was wild.
it's interesting.
How did you guys decide to open Attic?
I had really great benefits with H&M, and Todd would be furloughed every January, so we'd usually take a 2-week trip somewhere in the country. It would be a combination of visiting national parks and doing some camping, and then visiting craft breweries. So we had visited over 400 breweries just over the past 10 years or so that we had lived in Philly. And every time we'd drink beer, and you're always like, oh, I like this, I don't like this. If we opened a brewery, what would it look like? Never really thinking that, that we would do it. 2016 came around, and I was not enjoying my job anymore. And I called Todd one day, and I'm like, I'm gonna quit my job on Tuesday. Didn't know what I was gonna do. I knew I wanted to own my own business. And so I went online and just did some Google searching, and how do you know what you wanna do? Todd had talked about the Park Service being his dream job, and I was really envious of this feeling of he had always wanted to do that job and worked his way to get his dream job. So we had made a list of things that we enjoyed and knew that if we owned a business, it would be a business that took over our lives. Craft brewery was on that list. If it wasn't craft brewery, I wanted to repurpose furniture or something like that. But then somehow the craft brewers conference, somebody told us about it, or we had seen it somewhere, and it was in Philly in 2016, and it happened to be 2 weeks after I left my job. And I looked into how we could go. We paid a few $1,000s to join the Brewers Association and get tickets to go. And I bought a ticket for myself first, and after the first day, I told Todd, this is really cool. You should take a couple days off work and come. So we bought a second ticket, and for the rest of the week, we both went. We showed up as very studious people, not understanding that craft brewer's tag gets you a lot of free beer. But we both went in different directions. I went to a lot of the business workshops, and Todd went to a lot of the brewing workshops, and we'd meet between, and we were just gaining this excitement. And we'd come out and be oh my gosh, I met the owners of, such and such brewery that we had been to, and they were so if you want to do this, you can do this.
You opened Attic Brewing, and we're here in Germantown. Could you give me a little history about Germantown, or a little bit about the Germantown neighborhood?
It was originally kind of like the suburb of Philadelphia until Philadelphia just kept growing and growing, and eventually kind of overtook Germantown as just one of its neighborhoods. But I think the history that was here was really cool, but we also really enjoyed just the neighborhood in general. There's a real strong sense of community. It's a very diverse community. When we were thinking of opening a brewery, we didn't really want to do it anywhere else. We thought Germantown would be perfect for it. Something that we always didn't like about Germantown is that we'd want to go out somewhere and there wasn't a whole lot of places to go. And that was part of our reason for thinking that Germantown would be a great place to have a brewery, so that people had a place to go. And as we've been open these last few months, we're starting to see that it's exactly what people wanted.
This neighborhood doesn't have the amenities that other neighborhoods have, and that means that not only for us who live here, but also for all of our neighbors, that they don't have a cool place. And when you have that cool neighborhood spot, that's what builds a stronger community and a stronger neighborhood, because you see the people face to face. It's not just through a Facebook group. So we really worked hard to sample our beer, to partner with neighborhood organizations that are already here, to talk to neighbors who have lived here their whole lives, and to ask them hey, do you drink alcohol? Do you drink beer? Why don't you try our beer? It's really amazing to see the neighbors. I had to get work done yesterday, and Todd came back and he's there's so many neighbors here. I'm then I absolutely can't leave the office because I'm never gonna get my work done. But it's fun to walk out and everyone's names, and they start to meet each other. And COVID's put a little bit of a damper on this great thing that we had for the first 8 weeks that we were open. But Germantown was the most vibrant commercial corridor outside of Philadelphia for a long time. And then when you see these policies, redlining, but also crack that came through this neighborhood, it really took a lot out of it. And we want to be a part of helping to bring that back, not for a new set of people to move here, but for the people that already live here now who haven't had good paying jobs in their neighborhood or a cool place to go.
It was definitely a heavily industrial neighborhood, and we're in what appears to be an old factory.
This whole area, this Berkeley Street, was at one time all big industrial buildings, and a lot of the neighborhood is built around what was this big industry where managers would live and employees would live, and so you can see that history as you drive around. But this building specifically was the Blaisdell pencil factory in the late 1800s, so the 3-story red brick building that you see from Berkeley Street would have been that, and he invented that type of pencil that you unwrap. After the Blaisdell pencil factory closed, it was making lamps for a little while, and we believe that's when this larger, where our taproom is, this part of the building would have been built. These buildings were huge textiles. You still have Wayne Mills, which is across the street from us. There was a 5-story silk factory next to us. But then again, when all of these industries were closing, lots of industry moving overseas, lots of clothing being made in other countries, those buildings closed and sat vacant. So we know people who lived their whole life in Germantown and only saw these properties as vacant their whole life, and they tell us stories about playing in the abandoned buildings. When our landlord, Philly Office Retail, bought the building, we walked through it and saw this cool opportunity to bring life back into this cool building. It did not look anything like this when we walked through, but I think we both had rose-colored glasses on, and we're just so excited to have a home for our brewery. But we're really proud of what we've done with it and how cool it is now.
You guys went to CBC, you decided this is what we want to do. How do you go from that thought to, opening a place up?
We knew there was going to be a lot of work involved. It really helped that Laura had the time to do it after quitting her job. Laura was really able to dive in and figure out how to come up with a business plan and do the research needed to get, proper equipment and stuff. And she also started working for different breweries to get a kind of an idea of how they operated. So that really helped, but it did take time to go from home brewing all the way to this big scale system. One thing that we talked about from the very beginning is how are we going to brew really good beer when we open. And since neither of us had a whole lot of experience on like a big commercial system, we thought it was very important that we find somebody who can brew really good beer for us. And luckily our brewer that we found, we knew from friends and knew that he had a good background as far as brewing goes, and brought him in to kind of help us scale up recipes and also to make these really good beers. I don't think we ever felt like we're gonna have to be looking for brewers, because I think he was always interested. It just took us a little while to work him in.
I asked him a few times and he turned us down, so I don't know that he was always interested in what we were doing, but interested in the job, I'm not so sure.
I think he was. He just knew we weren't opening yet and was biding his time.
The hardest part when you want to start any business is, where is the money going to come from? I think part of why it took so long was we own our brewery 100%, and we knew that we were opening in a neighborhood that we knew, and we just wanted to make sure that we could make those decisions that are best for our business in the neighborhood that we were in. So we found creative ways to raise money. We did a WeFunder, which opened investing to everyone. We were the first brewery in Philadelphia to do that. And that was a challenge because people are loyal to Philadelphia breweries, and Philadelphia likes their craft beer. But for us, these two people who had lived most of their life in Philly and Germantown, in a neighborhood that doesn't know a lot about craft beer, trying to get people who had never been to Germantown to everyone to invest in our brewery was a challenge. We had 6 months and we ended up with 307 investors, but we thought of them as, they're part of our team, they're on this journey with us. We were able to ask them for help and knew that when we opened, at least 307 people are going to be excited that we open. Even if they all brought one person or had one birthday party here, that we could really jumpstart our business through that. But there was a lot of time over those 4 years where it was very stressful. Getting an SBA loan was a challenge that took over a year to close. And then you have the normal challenges with construction not going to plan and equipment delays and forgetting, oops, I forgot that we were going to need that, and where are we going to get another $10,000 from? You kind of have to have a mentality that you're just going to keep pushing through. We early on made a list of, these are the skills I have, these are the skills you have, and these are what we need help with. Like you said, Bogdan was a huge help. A year ago, almost to the date, is when he officially joined our team. And so he was able to help us. There was so much stuff that we didn't know that we needed. And we'd actually joke about it because Todd would ask for things, and I'm like, we don't have money for it. And then Bogdan would ask for stuff, I'm like, here, whatever you want.
It's all about the beer.
It is, yeah. It was we got to definitely prioritize getting the equipment that we need to make great beer, and then had to cut corners a little bit with some of the other things that we wanted. Of course, it felt like a huge success when we opened, and then 8 weeks later, it was like, brr, brr, brr.
I'll come back to that.
Yes.
When did you sign the lease to this spot?
We signed a lease in January of 2018. The problem in Germantown, so we knew we wanted the brewery here. We were like, if we're opening in Philly, we want to be able to walk to work, and we want to live in Germantown, so the brewery has to be here.
As you guys I'm sure are very familiar,
we did an event in April of 2017 in Germantown with the local CDC, and had a lot of interest from landlords who wanted our brewery there, and a lot of interest from customers who were like, oh, put it here, put it here, put it here. But I was like, listen, breweries are popular, and I don't think that you want 1,000 people parking around your house. Parking's an issue everywhere in the city. And then because brewing is manufacturing, we also needed a big enough space. So it really limited where we could go in the neighborhood. A lot of people had mentioned Philly office retail. So we connected with them and said, hey, we have this idea for a brewery here, and we're looking for a space. So we spent a little time walking through a couple different properties. They had some that were closer to the major commercial corridor, but we knew as a manufacturing business what type of space we need, and then in order to get the customers, what type of access to public transportation or parking that we were going to need. But then they talked about this project and how there was a barbecue restaurant next door. We were already familiar with Deke's Barbecue. I joked that like my stomach said yes before like I said yes, because we were big fans of their garage spot on Schurz Lane. And then, we just committed to it and said like it has a lot of potential.
What was the place like when you guys walked in?
It was basically a very dingy warehouse. It was, none of the walls were here. Still had like the columns, the brick. Still had like probably the original windows there from the early 1900s, but they were all covered up with this weird plastic sheeting. The roof was collapsed on the whole side of like Deke's Barbecue side, so it was in pretty rough shape when we walked in, but I think we kind of were able to look past that and see the potential of it and realize that there was a lot of really cool things that we can do. We had to convince Philly Office Retail to do a lot of this cool stuff that we had in mind, but I think in the end it kind of worked out. One of the things that we really wanted, all the brick had been like whitewashed with this old paint, and it was all like white and gray and yellow looking and looked terrible. So we had to convince them that the best option was to try to sandblast that, get it off. And once we saw they did that, it really warmed up the interior, which was cool. The original windows were pretty neat looking, but they're also in rough shape, so those all got replaced. And when we saw those get replaced, it really brightened up the place.
It is an industrial building, but for us, we didn't want it to feel industrial. A lot of brewery tap rooms have that industrial feel with this metal chairs and concrete. We had those elements here, but really wanted it to feel like warm and cozy and like home. The biggest thing for us was like lighting and then incorporate as much wood as we could. When we were going out to Reading to find antique back bars, we actually met, it's called J&N Lighting in Reading. John is and his wife Nellie are like amazing people and close friends of ours now. But he specializes in fixing up old antique lights. So almost all the lights that you see are original, like from 100 years ago. And he repaints them and all the glass shades, and it added like a cool element. Architectural Antiques Exchange, that's where we ended up getting the antique back bar. He was just like a really nice guy, and we kind of told him the budget that we had, and he's like, these are the 3 of the many back bars he had. These are the 3 that you could purchase. But it really worked, the reddish color of the wood with the brick, and people come in and they think that back bar had been there. And I'm like, oh no. And everything, even like we chose to do like kitchen style tables because we all have these warm memories of sitting around tables, and people would see like the Tiffany lights and be like, oh, I had a light like that in my house, or my grandma had this same table, and it immediately makes you feel like you're at home. And then so many people come in, and when we tell them that we only opened in January, they're like, there's no way, like they don't believe us, because it feels a little bit worn in. It's not brand new, you don't have to worry about breaking anything. It feels very cozy and comfortable. We really tried to make sure that it felt warm and felt welcoming, and that it didn't feel like you were walking into a factory anymore. Picking the name Attic was hard. It like fits now, we say it so many times, but part of that was it doesn't limit us to what we can do. So we've got a lot of different beer names that come from all over the place, but in the interior can be a little bit tchotchke. It can be a little bit mix and match because you're in an attic. Like, what would you collect over the years of your life? What different unique things do you treasure and hold on to, and memories that you make, and furniture or lighting or whatever.
Light bright.
Yeah, the light bright. It's back
I guess
there.
I saw that. I'm like, I know I saw it.
Yeah, it's back there.
I've been staring at sadly it's not in the shop, but I've been staring at the tiger behind
Oh, the
you.
bar tiger.
You're blocking it out a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
It's just a cool thing. My brother is like a jack of all trades. He lives in Chicago, but he came out to help us do some of the work that we needed to have done to open. And he brought a whole carload full of like little things that he had picked up. He helps people like clean out houses and just like saves cool things. And the tiger was something he brought. And at first we were like, what are we supposed to do with this? And then it was so cool looking that we put it up on the bar. And then for the first couple weeks we were open, it was the most like for us, everybody who was here posted it on Instagram.
So with the beer that you guys are brewing itself, what were you guys what was your plan? What were you trying to think of when you started brewing?
Being located in Germantown and understanding that there's not a huge following of craft beer here, we wanted to make sure that as we're brewing beer, we find approachable styles that most people will go for. So when we started creating our different types of beer that we wanted to make sure there's something here for everybody. So of course we're going to have IPAs, those are going to sell, but we always wanted to have something like kind of lighter. One of the beers that we've been brewing for a really long time was a cream ale, and it's probably very quickly becoming one of our signature beers. This is one of those approachable styles that when people come in here asking for Heineken or something like that, we'll give them a sample of the cream ale, and they're like, yeah, this is good. It's balanced, it's not too hoppy, it's not too sweet or anything, it's just a nice, easy drinking beer. So that's something that we always want to make sure we have here, is just one of those light styles. But we also know that everyone has different tastes, so we'll always have a dark beer on tap. We're really big fans of Belgian styles, so we have a couple Belgian styles going right now. Whenever we can, we get German lagers and ales on tap. We haven't really gotten into like real crazy experimental stuff yet. Probably the most kind of out there beer that we have is our Sage Against the Machine Goza, where we threw a little bit of like fresh sage into a Goza style, and it actually is very nice and refreshing, but also has kind of that sort of savory flavor too, so it kind of goes both ways. But as we notice people coming into the tap room, we're starting to see that we're glad we have such a wide variety of options, because if all we had were IPAs, there'd be a lot of people coming in that wouldn't be happy about it. And I think that's kind of the fun part about working here, because you get a lot of people who aren't familiar with craft beer, and they're like, well, I like this kind of beer, so you give them like a sample of it, and they're like, oh yeah, I can drink this, and they'll get it. It's just interesting. You see other people coming in who want the lighter styles, or some that have never had a New England style IPA, and they're like, oh, we don't like IPAs, they're too bitter. It's like, well, try it. And they're like, oh, this is really good. It's just cool being here and educating people about craft beer, and that there's so much more options out there besides just your usual.
You guys built out, you had your business plan, you had your staff in place, and you guys opened in January. How did it go at first?
It was great. We timed it. It ended up that the January 17th was the 100th anniversary of the start of Prohibition, and we are huge fans of the show Boardwalk Empire, and the very first episode opens on that date in 1920. And so we had this really cool opening. We had some friends dress up and we got raided. Someone called it dinner theater. In the middle of like this huge chaotic opening, these Prohibition agents came in and raided us and found the beer, and it was really fun and cool. We had a nice few weeks of being open. A good response from customers, people coming out. We had started finding our groove with events. We were doing free live music on Thursday nights, lots of local musicians. Germantown has a lot of local musicians that live here. We felt really good about it, and we were getting a lot of really good feedback from customers. Good reviews on our beer, great reviews on our service. We had a lot of events on the calendar for the end of March. We had a lot of events on the calendar for April, and huge plans for the summer.
And so at the end of the 8 weeks, mid-March, basically everything shuts down. Beer, of course, is a essential commodity, apparently.
I think manufacturing was the essential part. The beer part, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure about that.
I think
they shut liquor down in the state.
Did they?
The state, Pennsylvania runs their state system.
Oh.
So all liquor was shut down.
Got it, okay.
Outside of any Pennsylvania-based distilleries, you couldn't buy spirits anywhere.
Got it.
So you're essential.
I guess so.
Yeah.
We definitely felt very essential, because we stopped, kind of like took a halt on brewing, like let's not, be too ambitious about what these next weeks are going to look for. And then at a point, Bogdan was like, did you see, there's not very many kegs left in that cold box. And we're like, oh crap, we need to get back on a, twice a week brewing schedule. But our business, we never planned on canning beer in 2020. So that was the biggest challenge, was we just kind of spent every bit of money that we had to open, had 8 weeks open, and then immediately had to change everything to canning beer. So every one of the 7,000 plus breweries in the country, we started looking at equipment. And even in those first 2 weeks of March, there were lots of texts and phone calls about, should I buy this canning machine? Should we do this? And then eventually when we did it, it was probably a little too late, but we were still in there. We went to order a 32-ounce crowler machine. I called and said, hey, I'm a brewery, any way you could bump me to the top? And they rushed us out the machine I had ordered. Lo and behold, it was the wrong one, the 16-ounce cans, but ended up being a blessing in disguise. I had a pallet of crowler cans and a 16-ounce canner and was like, oh crap. Tess and Bill and Triple Bottom Brewing, Tess and I text back and forth, and I was like, I made a mistake, oh my gosh. And she's like, well, I have empty 16-ounce cans if you want them. So they helped us get started right away, and then we ordered 16-ounce cans and went through all the challenges of paper labels and printing them off our inkjet printer. And then now we're kind of like up and running with that. We can every can individually, and we've done almost 38,000 cans that way.
So we do have a real canning machine coming.
Hopefully the end of October.
Yeah.
The canning was excellent for us. We, as a new brewery, made the decision to offer free delivery, and then over the course of the first few months just kept expanding that delivery area, because we knew that people had never heard of us, they had never sampled our beer before, most of their friends have never had it, so that word of mouth was missing. But we thought, hey, there's no minimum to buy and free delivery, like maybe they'll give us a chance to, hey, let's just try it one time, get a mixed 4-pack of beer. And then we've had a lot of loyal customers who order every week, and like really good response. Now that we have the outdoor dining for us open on June 12th, since we've had that, most of our business has shifted back to the draft through the tap room for the outdoor seating, but we'll continue to can our beer forever now.
You know, you were able to open outside in June. Now, do you guys serve food?
We don't. When the governor made the restriction about having to serve food, we partnered with the local pretzel place, Tasty Twisters. So we serve their soft pretzels, and then we make our own beer cheese. And then we have Deke's Barbecue next door, so you're allowed to eat from a food truck or their restaurant next door, and then we have food trucks come in to cover that, but we don't have a kitchen here. Starting September 8th, we're supposed to be able to have indoor, and then all of the rules and regulations that come with that. We're really prioritizing our team safety, the customer safety, and then trying to keep our business going.
And you'll go 25% is what they say right now?
It is, so, and that includes your staff. So for us, it's about 20 people. Our plan is that we're not going to open for indoor unless it's raining and we can't use the outdoor space. We have over 100 seats outside, but the idea of having people ordering drinks and then customers sitting down and trying to like maintain both like indoor and outdoor, I think it's just going to be a little bit much for us and our team right now. But if the weather isn't nice, we'll open for indoor, and then as the weather continues to change, hopefully we can still have that come November, December, when it's too cold to sit outside.
You know, obviously the pandemic has thrown a monkey wrench in the business plan, or at least, you know, how it was going to progress. You know, with that in mind, you know, what's the next step for Attic?
So many things changed for us, but it also pushed us decisions that we thought we'd be making in October of 2020, we were making in April of 2020. So we have 2 new tanks that are coming here at the end of September, because we realized that we can't keep up with the demand for our beer now that we have it packaged and are selling it draft. So we have 2 new tanks coming. We have the semi-automatic canning machine coming, which will help us quality control more on the cans. The cans are great, but it'll just give us a little bit more quality control over that. But for us, we're not trying to become a massive brewery in Philadelphia. We think we have something really cool in this great neighborhood. And so for us, it was always about when someone's here in the city and they're like, oh, what's a great brewery to go to? We just want them to have our name on that list, where it's like, oh, you should definitely go out to Attic Brewing Company, spend the day in Germantown. Our landlord owns most of the block now, and we're looking at expanding a little bit into some of the buildings next to us. Having our small outdoor beer garden now, we can't have that permanently, so we're looking at possibly getting some space next to us on the other side where we can open a more permanent outdoor beer garden, and just continuing to, you know, grow here in our neighborhood. We still think there's a lot of opportunity for us to expand our customer base. It's really fun to be young and to count your Instagram followers and to try new things and see how, you know, you can connect with new customers. I think like everybody, the winter scares us. Like, we're very anxious. Already we've seen through the end of August and beginning of September. We've been having a lot of success, but come November, December, January, February, we have no idea what that's going to look like. Part of what we're doing is reaching out, trying to use resources that are available, applying for grants and loans to make sure that we're able to, survive the winter and be able to look forward to a great 2021 and kind of put back on the calendar all the cool things that we were going to do this year.
How many people do you guys have working for you?
I call them the baker's dozen because there's 13 of us. So it's Todd and I, and then we have 11 employees. They're really a cool, diverse group of people. Everyone comes from different backgrounds. We have people who were born and raised in Germantown, people who lived in other states. They come from different backgrounds and have different outlooks on life, but
they're all pretty much Germantowners, which is cool.
Yeah, almost our entire team lives here in Germantown. But when we see them interacting with each other and know that their two paths would never have crossed in this world if it wasn't through here. And nobody would, if you had them out and you had to pick which two are best friends, you would never pick them out as being best friends. But it's really cool to see that. And during COVID, everybody has been affected in such different ways that it's great that everybody knows that they can come here, they can be their true self. If they're having a hard day, they have a whole team of people to support them. And we feel really proud as business owners that we pay our employees well. It's never been an issue or a challenge. And when they went from being bartenders where they were paid $8 an hour and got tipped on top, as soon as they went to canning beer, they were paid $15 an hour, but then still got tipped on top of it through all the tips that people were paying for their online orders. Everyone is making over a living wage. One of our employees was struggling to put food on the table and we purchased some groceries. Another one, had to take care of family members and we adjusted their schedule. I think going through those things early helped people see what type of business owners we are and what type of business we are. We need to run a profitable business. In order to do anything, we have to have a profitable business, but we look at lots of different things when we're making business decisions. I think COVID has helped us just recommit to those things and to see how important they are in the world, because you never know what's going to happen and how it's going to affect people.
Is there anything you guys want to add?
We hope that people, if you're looking to come have outdoor dining and you like craft beer, we're a really cool spot to check out. Most people have never been to Germantown, but we're really accessible. We have off-street parking, free street parking. You can take the train if you feel comfortable doing that. Just come check us out.
Guys, thanks for spending all this time with me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Sure.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. If you'd like to learn more about Attic Brewing, you can check out their website or their social media accounts. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.